but I'm going to go ahead and get started. So today, I'd like to discuss. Here we go. All right, can we all see my screen?
Yes, we can see. Yes.
All right, perfect. All right, so today I'm going to be discussing teaching media literacy in EAP classes, so English for Academic Purposes classes. I'm really going to be focusing on the deconstructing of the messages and decentering singular perspectives. And I've been teaching and modifying and adapting this lesson and this project for quite some time. And especially within the United States, media literacy and deconstructing of the media has been incredibly crucial as we've had, well, some interesting situations and interesting figures occupy the White House over the past couple of years, but we are hopeful that things are going to improve now. But it's been very important, at least, to start to deconstruct and understand media, and also to understand various perspectives and ways of thinking. So I also, here we go. All right, so what I'm going to be talking about is I'll be discussing the heart of media literacy as a principle of inquiry. I'll be delving into what literacy is, what media literacy is, why teach media literacy, and of course, how do we teach media literacy in these contexts. I will also be expanding upon how I've been able to adapt this to the fact that most of us, at least, are still at home. Most of us were asked to go back home last March, and some of us are still here, for the most part, teaching remotely. At the moment right now, I'm at a hybrid model, so I am partly in the classroom face-to-face, but mostly still at home. So I've had to use various apps and different types of platforms in order for this project to come alive, as face-to-face classes have not been possible in their entirety. I also want to, at this time, I hope that this project and these ideas that I'm going to share will hopefully take a little bit of weight off of us and off of you as educators, because we put so much on ourselves. And I've spoken a lot about teacher engagement and well-being and things over the past year. And this meme really speaks to me. It says there's nothing we can't do if we work hard, never sleep, and shirk all our responsibilities in our lives. And I'm not sure, but I definitely speak for myself when I say that I have felt that way over the past year. And I've definitely been trying to find ways to take a lot of the onus off of me and also put some of that engagement and partnership on my students. And a project like this and this type of unit has helped to do that, because they've also been able to share their insights. Okay, so I want to just quickly share a very brief list with regards to 19th to 20th century learning and content mastery, moving into the 21st century learning and process skills. This is a big list. I do have a much better image following, but I just want to take a second for you just to look at the differences even within how we approach education inside and also outside of the classroom. So going from pencil and pen and word processing, classroom limited learning, teacher selected lecturing, to the 21st century where we're looking at emphasis on process skills, access, analyze, evaluating, creating, teacher discovery, multimedia analysis, multimedia technology, expression, circulation, dissemination. These are all really important key points within the 21st century learning process skills. And also kind of a call for us as educators to go and adapt to where the world is going with regards to this. And I like a good kind of graphic, and I think this is a bit blurry, my apologies for that. But it also kind of breaks down the 21st century learning of foundational knowledge. And look at that, foundational knowledge, digital literacy, in addition to, of course, core content knowledge and cross-disciplinary knowledge. You also have the meta-knowledge, creativity, innovation, problem-solving, critical thinking, and also more, the humanistic knowledge. You have cultural competence, life skills, and awareness. And so all of these different ideas together, packaged together, as to why I'm a huge proponent in teaching something like media literacy in my English for Academic Purposes classroom. Ooh, gotta have the coffee. Okay. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to take a definition from the Center for Media Literacy. As we know, literacy is the ability to read and write, but media literacy is the 21st century approach to education, as the previous models and slides discussed. It provides a framework to access, to analyze, evaluate, create, and participate using messages in a variety of forms, from print to video to the internet. It builds an understanding of the role of media in society, as well as essential skills of inquiry and self-expression necessary for the citizens of a democracy. And this is, again, the definition from Center for Media Literacy. It is a 2002 definition. I always like to use more updated definitions, but I still feel this is still quite relevant, especially when you're looking at accessing, analyzing, evaluating, creating, and participating. And the bolded use was my own. So as I've said before, we are changing with the times, and we're not just necessarily looking at just these social media messages, but also these social media platforms on which they are shared. As we also know and we understand that widespread information is not all the same. And so there's been this call that's been answered to try to understand what is happening within how we can try to look at the different media sources that we have, and in addition to trying to find out the different platforms where they're shared, such as Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and these types of areas. This is a Western-centric image, and I always encourage my students to find their sources as well from their home countries. But I'm going to go ahead and share with you, this is the media literacy bias scale, and if I have a chance, I'd like to try to share an updated one that I just shared with my students yesterday. Let me see if I can. Can you all still see my screen? I hope. Yes.
It's clear from my side.
Yes. Okay. So this is the media bias chart. This is what they call chart 7.0. This was just updated as of January 2021. And what this does is it takes a lot of the well-known media. There is BBC, and there's also Reuters. But a lot of these, of course, as I said, are very US-centric. But it goes from original fact reporting to complex analysis, very one-sided, right down to contains inaccurate, fabricated info, as in everything that you are reading on this site are essentially not true. And as you can see from the left and the right perspectives, or the more conservative or liberal perspectives, every source has a way of kind of branching out. There are those that stay more neutral, they stay more unbiased, if you will, and they kind of branch out to more or less, yes, these sources are going to give perspective, but some sources might give more perspective than others. And when I was talking about the right and the left, when I was sharing with my students even yesterday, a couple students said, okay, so the right is right and the left is wrong. So I definitely had to clarify that and say, well, no, these actually involve kind of a continuum of different perspectives, more conservative leaning to more liberal leaning. But as you can see, even on both sides, you're going to find sources that are just completely fabricated and pretty much inaccurate. And if you've been able to follow some of the news here, you've been able to probably see where looking at sources like that could lead to with regard to public consumption of it. So I always show this source, but I just want to kind of get an idea. When you see the source, and I'm going to try to open the chat as well, what do you notice? First things that you notice when you see a chart like this. I'll just take a few ideas right now. Let me see if I can get to the chat. Any thoughts? Okay.
Yeah, there is no answers. No answers.
Well, there's no wrong answers. They're all different observational answers. And I will share the link for this chart as well in the chat afterwards. So some things that you can notice is that we are definitely all on a continuum. Okay, yes, so people are saying there's graphic figures. I can also check chat on my watch, which is very helpful. Yes, exactly. So it's a continuum. Not all media are created equal. Some media are actually created to mislead and to misinform. And there are many, many sources. So here is my question. How can learners outside of the West, outside of the US, use this source as a guide? Does anyone have any ideas? Different font letters, okay. Variety of methods. Misinformation on both sides, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
Some say it's variety of methods.
Yes. Yes. I'm not checking the time, I promise. I have my Apple Watch, and so I'm checking the chat from my watch, so I'm able to do that. Okay, great. Come back to this idea as well. All right, so essentially, if you're looking at the importance of deconstructing media, according to the Center for Media Literacy, there are 5 core concepts. Media messages are constructed. They're constructed using a creative language with its own rules. Number 3 is probably one of the most important things that I try to highlight to my students, that different people experience the same media message differently. People can see the same message and they can look at it and they can think that it means something completely different from another person or from another group, for example. They have embedded values and points of view, and most media messages are organized to gain profit and or power. And so understanding these key concepts, you can start looking at and exploring different types of media yourself. There are also 5 questions that we ask regarding who created the message, what creative techniques are used to attract my attention, how might different people understand the message differently, and also, more importantly, so what values, lifestyles, and points of view are represented in or omitted from this message, and then why is the message being sent? So this is why I like to add that deconstruction aspect or decentering aspect to my lessons when I teach this, is because when you decenter, you no longer are focused. It's no longer clear. And that's okay, because if something is not
Can you hear us? Your mic is muted.
Ask the presenter to unmute.
Yeah, I ask him. Dr. Anastasia, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You are muted.
Okay. I don't know why. All right, maybe.
Okay, but I want you also, if you can follow the chat box because if you ask question, because we receive many answers. Maybe you need to be patient because, because of, connection and So you can follow the chat from another mobile device. Or,
All right. How long was I on mute? Was it a couple of minutes or?
yeah, a couple of minutes. Maybe you need to go back for 2 minutes.
No problem. Okay, thank you, Mr. Faisal. I appreciate that. As I said, I won't see the chat right away, but I can definitely see context, depends on one's ideology. Absolutely, yes. And again, this is when I was discussing and talking about, yes, the world is misinformed a lot. It's absolutely a good way to learn about the culture of language itself. I agree. Yes. Several sources. Yes, exactly. Yes, these are all excellent points here. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, gaining attention by color, sites, sizes, types of information for sure. Oh, and then there's sound. Okay. All right. The rest of the chat says they can't hear. Okay. Great. Yes, technology. Okay. Great. Yes. Okay. Let me return to what I was discussing. Okay. Did you all hear the 5 questions to ask? Yes? No? Okay. Maybe I'll go back here. All right. Did you hear me discuss the importance of deconstructing media? Yes? No? Maybe? All right. I will. Okay. So I will also be sharing my PowerPoint as well, but when we're looking at the importance of the deconstruction of media, as I said, there we go. Yeah, so all messages are constructed. And the one part that I was highlighting here was that different people experience the same media message differently. And of course, media have embedded values and points of view. And most media messages are organized to gain profit and or power. Okay. Also, okay. I think somebody's still on.
Negal, could you hear us?
There's somebody who still has their sound on. Oh, there we go.
Negal,
Okay.
please, can you mute your mic
I think we have
and
it.
switch off your camera? Nijal Wilson.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Did you hear us?
Yeah.
Nijal Wilson. Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. And if you switch off your camera, we'll be more grateful.
Okay.
Okay. Go on.
Let's see. Okay. And finally, the 5 key questions to ask is who created the message? What creative techniques are used to attract my attention? How might different people understand this message differently? What values, lifestyles, and points of view are represented in and omitted from this message? And again, this is why I talk with my students about, why I introduced the whole media literacy chart is so that I can show and I can say it's really important to decenter your own perspective because, and I asked them, I said, what if just you're following only one media source? You're only going to be getting that one aspect. And when you decenter, yes, you absolutely do blur. You may not be able to see what you want to see so clearly, but that is okay. Because when you start to decenter, and things start to blur around you, you at least get to see that there are many different perspectives around you of the same idea. And as you can also see, according to the chart, you will also see that some of those perspectives are meant to mislead, but a lot of the perspectives just offer different ideas. And some of them, yes, they do depend on values, on ideology, on different ideas. But it's always very important to have a very well-rounded approach to a topic so that you can better understand it. And this is also very important when you're arguing ideas and thoughts. And here, okay. So When we're looking at the Center for Media Literacy, it is indeed, the focus is American media. So what I try to, again, is decenter it. Yes, in my class in the United States, the purpose is, of course, for ESL students learning about media literacy also have an opportunity to learn about American culture. But I also repurpose it, and I try to include elements to include a broader international audience. So I have them take the chart and say, okay, what about your own media in your own country? Where do you think it might fall with regard to completely unbiased into maybe offering a certain perspective? Like, where would it fall on the chart? So I try to help them to practice this by saying, choose a story, any story. Now, find that story being told from two different sources and tell me the difference between how the story is being told. So they can actually practice and say, well, what parts are being omitted? What perspectives are being included? And also, more importantly, how might different groups understand the media message differently, and what groups might be leaning towards certain sources than others. So it's a really good exercise to do. And I, of course, culminate this with a project and also a paper so that they can practice this using different English techniques. So why teach media literacy in ESL, EFL bilingual contexts? Well, it can help students with English acquisition using authentic texts. It helps to engage those critical thinking skills, which are so needed in the 21st century classroom. It also helps students to engage with multiple pieces of media, and it helps people, students, educators, etc., to become critical consumers of media from multiple perspectives and possibly multiple cultures. All right, so how can we teach media literacy in these contexts? Depending on your age group, you can select different pieces of media, and you can go through different exercises of the class, or you can have students select media from commercial advertisements or from different articles. I have done this in various types of ways. The most recent one that I've done is I've had them locate different commercial advertisements, one from US or the West and one from their country, and talk about how the ads represent different ideas, different techniques that they might use. And I go through the deconstructing questions. For my undergraduates in particular, I've explored how media is posted on certain social media platforms, and they can look at the interaction between participants, because now we have these social media platforms. It's not just about it's not just about the message itself, but it's
excuse me, you have been muted again. I'm sorry.
Thank you for letting me know that. I think that when people are muted, I think I get muted. But that's okay. Technology, yes? All right, thank you for letting me know. Okay, let me go back. All right. Right. So as I said, when we're talking about not just the message, but also the platforms, I wanted to briefly share with you the media literacy project that I worked on with my own students. I had various steps to this. And so the first thing I had was a presentation of the explanation and analysis of the video using media literacy strategies. So either they were looking at video commercial advertisements, or they could also look at paper advertisements. I focused more on advertisements than news stories for this particular project, because mainly because we had just gotten sent back home during the pandemic, and my students were already exhausted. So instead of having them analyze actual articles, I had them just to analyze commercials or articles. I gave them a choice, and a lot of people chose to look at certain companies and certain companies, and look to see how they were represented on social media platforms. So I had them find 2 to 3 messages on various social media platforms, analyze those using those deconstruction questions I shared with you earlier, and also evaluate the overall effect of social media on the entity. Now, once they did their presentation, I had all the audience members give feedback. And I've done this via Facebook when I've had just a Facebook class. I've also done this via discussion board. My university uses Canvas. And so I will have everybody post discussion comments. I'll have a thread for each group that presented, and then I would have them post feedback. And then what my students would have to do is they would have to write a paper based on their group project, talking about what they did and their analysis of the different advertisements or different types of media. And then they were to incorporate the feedback from their peers and assess and see what their perspectives are, and then conclude looking at, well, after looking at the feedback from my peers, have my perspectives, have my ideas, have my own interpretations changed? Because indeed, every piece of media is subjective. And so when my students are presenting their ideas and their perspectives on this media, they do so with the understanding that, again, your peers, some peers may actually hear that differently. They may interpret that differently. So could you be open to those different perspectives and incorporate that into some of your final findings regarding your own analysis? So as I said before, they participate in their discussions, and then they write and they synthesize the peer perspectives. So it's a chance for them to put their team project findings and the peer perspectives together in order to come to kind of some kind of final conclusion, if you will. We never necessarily come to conclusions. We just basically, for me at least, we just find other aspects and other parts of the story that we're trying to understand and we're trying to tell ourselves. Again, coffee break, always important. All right, so I want to take a few moments. In fact, let me pause just for a second and just take a few questions or comments from the chat before I show just a couple of sample projects from my students. Let's see. Oh, absolutely. A great chance to share research in media literacy. Technology has come of age in a way it supports and supported education during tough times. I absolutely agree. Yes, technology has definitely come to the rescue in a lot of ways, especially in our classrooms and trying to work on that engagement and keeping the education alive, no matter where we are in the world and if we're at home or anywhere. And yes, absolutely, there's caution about media should be used and taught carefully, for sure. And, you know, I absolutely have students who, here we go. Oh, muted again. Okay, there we go. I definitely have students who may not feel comfortable analyzing their media source because it might be their government media, and that's completely okay. I always invite them to use different sources from their home countries, but they're not, of course, made to. But they can certainly start looking at different ways that all media represents different perspectives, and you know, some students may not be as comfortable with that. But I've had a lot of engaging discussions through that, which has been really rewarding. All right. Let me see the participants. Are there any comments or questions? I might be able to take a few of them. I see one hand up.
Yeah, I think Lena.
Lena. Yes, Lena, do you have a comment?
Maybe she did it by mistake because she raised her hand up for a long time ago. I mean, I don't know.
That's okay.
Lena?
And I have almost 300 people, so I don't know.
It's around 175 till now.
Wonderful.
Wow.
All right, everyone. Okay.
Someone say that your screen is not visible to us. I think.
Oh, I stopped sharing my screen temporarily, so now I'm going to go back to it now. Okay, can we see it now?
Yeah, because I think when you stopped your sharing, you will see the chat, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so I wanted to, let me see. No problem. Okay. Okay. All right, so I wanted to show you just a couple of examples from my students have made. The first is, I think this one was, oh yes, this was so my students organized the World Health Organization, and they wanted to analyze an article from The Guardian. They also wanted to make me laugh, and so they also analyzed a cartoon that was put on by the World Affairs blog, and also made fun of the orange guy who was in the White House for a little while. So that was kind of a, but they also, so they used the article, they used a cartoon, and they started trying to analyze the different perspectives of the sources. And they also analyzed different platforms in which who was being represented. So they analyzed the Guardian article, they analyzed the cartoon, and they also had to ask a couple of thought-provoking questions to their audience, asking things like, do you think the WHO is doing their job regarding COVID-19 using social media? Because, especially in the early days of COVID, a lot of different organizations were using social media to spread the word, spread awareness, spread the work they were doing. And they also said, if you were working in the WHO, what are things you would change regarding social media? So how could you make it better? How could you make it more engaging? How could you make it credible and reliable? And they also came to different conclusions regarding similarities and differences between the sources. And I asked them, I said, you don't want to come to a conclusion regarding what source might be wrong, but there may be more sources out there that could be more reliable than the other, and why might that be? And again, that is going to differ based on your own perspectives and your own lens of how you're viewing this in the first place. Case in point, somebody, for example, who may be a Trump supporter might see this cartoon very differently. Me, I laughed and cried at the same time when I was reading this. But somebody who absolutely supported this guy would probably read that and interpret it in a different way. So again, perspective and perception is everywhere. And I really wanted to make sure that my students understood that even just by analyzing it, you're going to understand it differently from possibly other groups or other people, depending on a variety of variables. Okay. So another one is a couple of my students looked at Nike and how Nike is being used on YouTube and also via Instagram. And they wanted to look at how, how the different advertisements were used. And so Instagram is used more pictorial, whereas YouTube, you're going to see kind of more of a story playing out via video. And they looked at all different types of Nike campaigns and how they're used on social media. They also delved into a topic about would you be more likely to shop online or at a physical store for Nike? Do you consider yourself a person who buys a specific product that you saw in an advertisement, for example? And so they also kind of found different ways of, they kind of played with the physical face-to-face shopping and online. And again, this was also towards the beginning of the pandemic when we were all finding ourselves in dorm rooms and houses and homes. And Amazon was one of our best friends for a little while. All right. Another one of my students also analyzed looking at Amazon and wanted to look at different ways in which celebrities or web celebrities have a very powerful influence with a large fan base. And they also looked at ways in which social media could bring trouble to a company. So even looking at online reviews or things like if a certain group or a certain person does not like a company or doesn't like a product, they can completely roast you over social media via reviews or via tweets or things like that. They also said things like customers can point out existing problems, they can cause a crisis of confidence, and they can also lose customers and people are going to tell you. So I thought that it was very interesting that they took a they found a platform they found a company like Amazon and looked at ways in which customers are going to engage with each other. And then finally, this is the same thing. They also looked at persuasion skills like scapegoating and the big lie, so logical fallacy, and they found different examples of comments and perspectives. And they also looked at how, is social media better for a company or is it worse for a company? If you're the CEO of Amazon, would you choose to promote would you choose social media to promote your company? And so they kind of looked at different ways and different practices. And again, these are very shortened kind of snapshots of the slides of presentations. These are not the presentations in their entirety. And then finally, there was one where my students looked at how Tesla is represented on social media. So they used CNN and a podcast. They looked at the subtext. They looked at Elon Musk tweets via Twitter, looked at his influence on social media, Instagram, and also Facebook. And also kind of looked more and kind of play with the idea of, are certain ideas propaganda? And then, of course, once they did their presentations and they got the feedback from their peers, and then they kind of put together their final thoughts, a couple of students had selections such as the feedback were positive, classmates supported the position, it was interesting to listen to new ideas, and all these opinions, and they're very strong and definitely worth considering. So even just by analyzing a piece of media and talking about it, it doesn't just stop there. You want to listen to other perspectives of your classmates and then bring that into the conversation as well. During the discussion in class, it was possible to notice different viewpoints about the same topic, even though we had the same opinion as the ones who contributed with the debate. They called it a debate. It was more or less like a discussion regarding perspectives. I don't always like the word debate because that denotes there's one side that is right and one side that is wrong. And when you're looking at multiple perspectives and when you're dealing with a topic like a media literacy, you really have to be careful with the whole right versus wrong understanding of a topic. All right. So quick final thoughts before I go into a quick Q&A. I also experimented with kind of a hybrid model where, where students were able to engage via discussion board, because it doesn't always work to give a final presentation on a video. Sometimes there's technological issues and things, and so sometimes it helps for students to record their presentations in advance and then post them to like a discussion board, and students will have to watch them and view them. They still get some of that interaction via discussion board, but they may not get that live presentation that you would in a face-to-face classroom.
Anastasia,
yes.
Can you hear us? Sorry. Someone says, ask for if you can show the construction question slide again.
Oh, absolutely. And I will also be happy to share my PowerPoint.
And also, I caught two questions from the chat box. Later, I will. Okay.
Let me see if I can find. Yes, let me go to. I think they were here. Let me just. Yeah. Okay. So the 5 core concepts are here. And this is, again, medialit.org. And
yeah, I think this is the slide, right?
There's one, and then there's also the 5 key questions to ask. These are also from medialit.org. All right. All right, and then final thoughts regarding this particular project and what I do with my students. It also provides a framework for, of course, analyzing, critiquing media, teaching critical thinking skills, and more importantly, deconstructing articles or even pieces of media, looking at the opposing views as an engaging approach to learning, as well as they can have a chance to look at academic articles and agenda bias. Even language and word choice can reveal bias as well as always a possibility. So these are all just different things that people have told me over the past year or so as I've been engaging and talking with other colleagues about how to best discuss not only media literacy, but the whole deconstruction and decentering process as well. So I wanted to get a chance to ask you some takeaways or some ideas that you have. So I believe in being co-constructors of knowledge. And so I would like you to also contribute to this presentation, and we can share some ideas together in the next couple minutes that we have left. I already see so much information in the chat, but if anybody wants to contribute via chat, Padlet, absolutely. Padlet is something I have not gotten into, but I've wanted to look at for a while. But again, sometimes it can be really difficult to learn different platforms when you are still engaged in teaching and juggling everything that has come from mainly teaching at home. Any thoughts, any final thoughts or ideas that you would like to share? And also any sources. So for example, somebody shared something like Padlet. Are there any sources that you like to use in your class that you found successful? Online magazines, absolutely. Corpus tools. Oh, thank you, Dan. Yes, absolutely. Corpus tools are super important because you can see absolutely revealing bias in a language. Quizlet is also very good. Projectors. Yes, online magazines are excellent. The only thing that I've had to do is to make sure that if there is a limit on an online magazine to try to make an article into a PDF or something so students can still have access to it. Otherwise, they might have to pay. And I don't like my students have to pay for anything. So anyway, Hind. Hind, you are on mute.
Oh, okay. I will give them the mic. Okay, wait.
Power relations, absolutely. Oh, my screen's not on right now, that's why. Advertisement, yes. Yes, I will absolutely share the slides. I will share them with Mr. Faisal. Hind, you're still on mute. Did you want to share something? Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Okay. Hi. How's everyone? So I wanted to ask you about how you deal with international. You teach international students, right? How did you deal with the cultural barriers or cultural differences? Do they understand all these concepts? Are they all based in the U.S. and familiar with all these, ads and things, or do you kind of find a way to integrate culture and are there any cultural barriers, do you feel? Thank you very much.
Yes. So absolutely. So I teach kind of a variety of international students. Some are coming from the Middle East, some are coming from South America, some are coming from Europe. It really does depend. What I do is I teach those deconstruction questions and these things. And some students do not necessarily want to decenter when it comes to their own news sources, but they do like to be critical of Western-based sources. And so, and some students will want to venture and they'll want to critique their own country sources. And so it really is, it's a comfort level for them. Sometimes it might be a safety level as well. I teach those core concepts and I kind of let them run with it and see where they want to go with it. When I've had students decenter looking at their own media, some come really enlightened ideas like, well, my media is more over here. But again, this is why I start with the Western media, because I'm neutral ground. You can shred my media sources to pieces, and I'm very happy to hear your perspectives on it. But that's why I also show the chart too. The chart is kind of a jumping off point to say, hey, United States and in the West, we have tons of media sources, and look at how different, skewed all of them might be. So the important thing for them is just to really work on their critical thinking skills, and just understand that all media messages are subjective, no matter where they're coming from. But again, I always approach it very carefully. I'm always careful not to say this media source is completely wrong. I kind of leave it up to them. And if somebody wants to make that assertion in class, I always make sure they try to back it up and say, okay, let's look at the chart again. Let's see why. Why do you say that based on those decentering or deconstruction questions? But yes, I mean, it really just kind of go with comfort level for them. And I kind of just go with the flow of the class. I've taught this project and I've adapted it in different ways depending on the makeup of my classroom, how many students, where they're represented, and how in depth they want to get. So it kind of goes with them, I think, if that helps to answer your question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Help with that question.
Thank you. That was
Anyone
great.
else? Thank you so much. Thank you for attending. Anyone else have any questions?
Someone else is raising her hand. Ariza. Ariza?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Professor Anastasia. Thank you for your very informative, topic. Well, I would like to add something. So in our classrooms, in my class, we are going to deconstruct the messages. I personally focus student attention on presuppositions, modality, entailment. Okay, because these three things are very important for revealing or eliciting the reality. And people and students do enjoy, especially when we are focusing on the presupposition and modality. I think that it is a very good idea to incorporate these things as a an analytical devices for eliciting or going into the core meaning, or how the message is biased. Yeah, I think that it is just suggestion, okay? Just focusing on presupposition, modality, and entailment, and any other devices that news media are taking full advantage of them for promoting their own ideology. Okay, that's enough for me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Either leave them in the chat or unmute yourselves. Absolutely, yes. Life skill education plays an important role in deconstructing media. I could not agree more. Absolutely. Absolutely, very true. Yes, CNN, BBC. Yes, I see different sources here. Very good. All right. All right, that's perfect. Well, I am happy to share my PowerPoint and sources that I have used, including the link to the new media bias chart I've been able to use. If there are no more questions, I will.
No, there are questions I already collected. There are questions.
Oh, okay. I was looking in the chat. I didn't see any questions in the chat, though.
No, I just collect them. So
okay.
Okay. One of the questions. Okay, how do we arm our students to identify the currency of certain items in the media?
How do we what? I'm sorry.
How do we arm our students to identify the currency of certain items in the media?
Well, I think it depends on the stories that they are focusing on. But again, I go back to that media chart. and I look at well, I kind of look at what type of current stories are being told. When you mean currency, do you mean like what kind of stories are being told, or different perspectives are being told?
Just I collected the question.
Okay. I mean, the
Okay.
currency is really going to be the type of, it's really going to be what story is current. But I think my focus is looking to see how those stories are represented, and the different ways that they can be presented. But really, it's and looking at the different types of sources which are out there, which is why I start with the chart. But I also invite them to look at even their own country sources as well, and try to compare them and see how the story is being told. The currency is really going to be up to what is happening around the world. How the story is being told is going to depend on the source they use, or the sources that they use.
So, good evening, ma'am. Hello?
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, this is Kranti. Yeah, I'm from India, ma'am. So in India, we have a problem with the English students, especially second language learners. So how to inculcate the students to reach media? Mostly they doesn't have such habit of reading newspapers. So how can they participate in media activities? Could you suggest any suggestions to inculcate in students' minds?
Absolutely. So, they don't have to always start with reading. They can engage with advertisements and pictures. They can engage with video. Podcasts are also really popular as well. So I wouldn't just limit it to reading articles, but also just the listening and the visual aspects of things. Also, depending on their English level. So even if you're looking at, let's say, just media images, that can start a conversation, and looking at maybe even different perspectives of even that same image, or even different angles of that same image, different interpretations of that same image, that can start a conversation going. So I would start really wherever, I guess the whole thing is you have to start somewhere. So start small and then build up. If that answers your question.
Hello?
Dear sir, are you prepared?
Hello?
Hello?
Ahmad Zahir.
Good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Do I have the floor?
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Okay. In reaction to what my friend from India asked, there is always something that is trending in every culture, in every nation, in every city. For me in Nigeria, I try to get my students acquainted with what is happening in the media based on the current program that is going on. Every age bracket have a particular thing that is peculiar to them. There was a time that Indian movies were running in Nigeria, and almost every family would be glued to a particular station watching a particular movie at a particular time. So as a student, I wanted to use it as an avenue to teach English. So I'll come to the class and ask them questions based on what is happening in that movie at a particular scene, and allow them to write something about it. Sometimes also I create a group for them. I create a Facebook group. I bring issues happening on net, and I'll ask them questions that will expose them to learn from it and to make their own contribution. That's how I do it. In Nigeria, English is a second language, though we speak it often. Most of us grow with it. Most of us are born into families that don't even know their first language anymore because we live in the city. Now, to the question I asked earlier, I asked, how do we arm our students to know the currency of items in the net? So many students go to the land for research purposes. So many of them go to the net to get articles that can support their thesis. So how do we help them to understand the one that is for academic purpose and the one that is not suitable for academic purpose? Thank you. I'm Mr. Steven.
Okay. That actually is a whole nother skill with regards to reliability. And it's also really looking at what you're looking for, and that's honestly going to determine the source. And so a lot of times when I teach a research class, I don't just limit my students to peer-reviewed journal articles. There's absolutely a place for them. I tell them they should use them, but I encourage them to use opinion editorials and different magazine articles and newspaper articles, depending on the experts who are writing them. In addition to that, I also say, who is your favorite professor? Who is the person who you read a lot of? Chances are they might have a social media presence. And I say, do they have a Twitter account? Do they have an Instagram account? Follow them and see, what are they reading? What are they sharing? A lot of times when I was in my Women and Gender Studies graduate classes for my graduate certificate, I had a colleague of mine that every time there was somebody in the class who name dropped, or a professor name dropped somebody, they would search that person and see if they had an Instagram or a Twitter and immediately start following them to see what that scholar or that expert was reading or what they were sharing. And sometimes they will share a link to their latest article that you can get access to. So that's one of the ways I would highly encourage. Is I would say, where are the scholars, or rather, what are the scholars or the expert social media presence like? A lot of times they're going to have their own presence on social media. That answers your question. And thank you for bringing up film and movies. That also brings in beautiful perspectives and interpretation and amazing writing assignments as well that are very engaging. So thank you for sharing that.
Are you following the chat? There is a question. Yeah, there is. What is the best reason to allow students to create their own media?
Oh, create their own media? So nowadays, having an iPhone, having a video camera, if they want to do that, I haven't really delved into students creating their own media, but it's definitely, mainly because we just haven't had time in the semester to do that. But I would probably say that they, create it, and then and then maybe have other students in the class kind of deconstruct it. That's also a good way to practice that. Students could purposely use different types of techniques and see if the students can pick out, oh, you're using bandwagon, or oh, you're using a logical fallacy, for fun, possibly. But again, engagement, that's a great way to engage as well. Are there any other thoughts? I know this ends around 6, but I'm happy to stay on as long as it's 6:15 a.m. for me right now, so I have the morning. So I'm free to answer questions and engage with everybody as long as you need me.
Okay, there is a question, Anastasia. How can literacy media be taught for FL beginner learners?
So as I said before, at the beginner levels, you can start with images, or even start with subtitled commercials. I know that nowadays YouTube and other video platforms may offer subtitles in different languages. I'm a huge proponent in using all the languages that you know. So if your English level is beginner level, start with a commercial or an advertisement in your first language, and then start trying to use English vocabulary in order to dissect it. But not everything has to be 110% in English. And I know there are people out there who might disagree with me with that. But again, perspective. I definitely start somewhere, and I've used different images and things like that in my level 1 class to kind of get things started. It wasn't the focus of the curriculum. We had other things to look at with regards to objectives and the aims for those particular courses, but I would say that it could definitely still be used in multiple levels. You just may not be able to get at that critical thinking aspect in English, but you can definitely start and kind of build up as they move into higher levels in the English acquisition process. Any Other questions or thoughts?
What are the effective ways to analyze propaganda?
So again, I probably go back to those deconstruction questions. Now there actually are, there's a whole set of questions and ideas with regards to just looking at propaganda itself. But starting with those deconstruction questions will help to tease that out, especially the one about what aspects are being included, what aspects are being omitted, and also how might different people understand this message differently. Starting with that and understanding that. But propaganda is huge. I always like to use, for example, from my own U.S.-centered perspective, old World War II posters to show different propaganda and things, and showing how all countries, including the United States, used propaganda at that time. When I teach my humanities class, it always is a good jumping-off point. Any other questions?
Guys, just I want to clarify things, please. Those who ask about the feedback link, okay, I think because I wasn't creating that link, my colleague, I think we need to work on it. We'll email it to everyone along with the certificate, okay? No problem. So please do not keep me about the feedback. I think there is some technical problem with it, okay? So please, if you have questions to the Anastasia, you can raise your hand, you can mute your mic.
Hello.
Yeah, Muhammad Zahid.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm from India.
Yes.
Hello, could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, then thanks. My question is, do mainstream media have any role in motivating externally our students to learn media, the use of media, or to make media, make their part through media? Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll go back to the chart. Mainstream media definitely helps to try to students to figure out, depending on what country mainstream media they're listening to. It helps them to figure out what journalists and what stations are focusing on, and then from there they can question, well, maybe the story is being told here and the story is not being told here. Mainstream media, I think, is a really good jumping off point to start a conversation. But even mainstream media, you have, I always encourage them to say, okay, so where are they? And if, for example, the chart shows that they're more like, kind of unbiased, why are they unbiased? How are they showing different perspectives? Are there perspectives that are being ignored or just not discussed right away? But I think mainstream media is a really good jumping off point. But it's also a good point to kind of deviate from, because again, mainstream media is going to focus on the stories that the public is paying attention to, or they're going to divert public attention to what they want you to focus on. So it kind of works both ways. But now we have social media, where when something is trending or somebody is tweeting or there's a hashtag, mainstream media is paying attention to it, and they may actually divert their agenda to go and cover whatever is being tweeted about, whatever people are, just ordinary people are posting about. So the mainstream media can definitely go in different ways, where either they are looking at social media, seeing what people are paying attention to, or they also try to go with stories that they want the public to pay attention to. But I think it plays a great role when we're discussing media literacy in a lot of different ways. Yeah, thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
So guys, if you have questions, can raise your hand. You can unmute your mic.
I have a question. Okay, I'm trying to, the chat goes by so quickly. 4 language skills you can develop. Yes, okay, so depending on your English level, I'm looking at this question, what are the 4 language skills you can develop more using your approach? Well, reading, also listening if you're looking at podcasts, speaking because you have to speak about and use the presentation, or rather give a presentation about it. And so and also writing because they have to write a paper at the end. So all the skills are kind of working together. And then of course, continuing looking at the critical thinking and the collaborating aspect of it, it can only strengthen those language skills all the more. So I would probably say all of them.
Nice seeing you. How are you? Our card cannot open this.
Oh my God! Who dare to? Who dare to deactivate your card? And how you can say that? Please.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm okay. Yeah. I'm okay.
Dear sir, please.
No. Just.
I'm asked to be here. Please.
So let's see. I'm looking for other questions. Any comments?
Yeah, you can see some people raise their hand. I mean,
the only thing is that if I do that, I have to scroll through the participant chat, and I don't want it to kick me out.
There is a question. There is a question. I can.
Yes.
What do you exactly mean by creative techniques used to attract media readers or audience? Can you elaborate more on this?
One more time, please.
Okay. What do you exactly mean by creative techniques used to attract media readers or audience? Can you elaborate more on this?
Oh, right. Okay. So those have to do with the persuasion techniques. And that's a whole nother set of techniques, which I can also share links to. That includes things, so advertisements will use things like celebrity or bandwagon, or maybe even just, as they say, the plain folk, just using regular people. Also looking at like, or celebrity, as I said, like, oh, this person uses this product. That means maybe I should use that product. Also having to do with the text and the subtext, what is being said and what is being implied. So there's a whole nother set of different types of techniques like that, which I can also share some of as well. We cover a lot with regards to media literacy and deconstruction, and that's part of it, where we look at the different persuasion techniques which are used. And then also logical fallacies as well, the straw man argument, glittering generalities, things like that. I think I just got a 5-minute warning on.
Any more questions, guys? Okay. Can you see questions? More questions in the chat? No.
I see hands raised. I see 4 hands, 5. I don't know if they were from before or if they are current. But I guess I could probably say if you have any questions, unmute yourselves or turn on your camera so I know. It's hard to keep track of everybody. Let me go back to the chat. I see a lot of things about registration and certificate, so I don't see questions I can address. That's all. Okay.
More clarification on slide number 8, I think. Mm-hmm. One says, I need more clarification on slide number 8.
Oh, here, let me just do that.
You need to go to your slides.
Okay, so I'm going to send the link to that entire thing right here.
Yeah, but yeah.
There you go. Did you receive it?
If you can attach the PowerPoint, because a lot of participants ask for the PowerPoint, if you can attach them in the chat box.
Yes, I need to download the PDF of it and send it as an attachment. I have right now the Google Slides, so I need to download it, and I will send it to you, and then maybe you can disseminate.
Okay, I will do. I'll send it by the email, or I can upload it here in files in the chat. You can download.
Fine. Perfect. Yes. Yes, so as soon as I download the PDF of it, I will attach it as a link, and then I will also attach the other sources, etc. But yes, so I'm going to go ahead and do a final.
Okay, I think there is a question, and do you think media mirrors or constructs reality? I think I caught this one.
Does media
mirrors or constructs reality?
Does media construct reality?
Yeah.
It can. I mean, well, so reality, media can certainly construct what they want people to pay attention to, but people can also try to construct reality with media. I think it kind of goes both ways. But again, it all goes back to media literacy. How well can you read and understand and deconstruct and decenter media yourself? Does it construct reality? It can, and you have to realize that it can. But if you can deconstruct and you can decenter, you can understand that it does, and then you can go back and use it for your own purposes. But yeah, absolutely, media is powerful.
Yeah.
We have to know how to use it and know how to read it and know how to understand it. Does everyone see my contact information? Yes? No? Maybe?
Christine, I think someone raised hand. Christine, maybe I need to unmute, allow them to speak. Okay. Christine, could you hear me?
Can I ask
right. I just, yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. And my question actually was way before, but anyways, in many countries, media is associated with politics, and some of the educational establishments, it's a big no to discuss politics and all. So what was your suggestion?
I'm so sorry. Can you say one more time? I apologize. You weren't. It wasn't very clear.
Yeah. Now can you hear me?
I can. Yes. I can get maybe like every third word.
Oh,
what is your question?
So the question actually passed. However, I want to ask the question, like in some countries, right now I'm working in Bahrain, and specifically here, when you say media, it's directly associated with politics, and politics is not allowed to be discussed in the educational establishment. So what is your perspective of how do I implement, or how do I make or convince even the management that this is very useful for the students, especially for the English learners? Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. I mean, first, I would say, as somebody who has also lived and worked in the Middle East before, and also in other parts of Asia, go with whatever government regulations that you have. If indeed they say stay away from politics, I would first ask them, what kind of politics? Do you mean local politics, like your own, like, for example, Bahrain politics? Or can you bring in other, like other political government situations? For example, I know that, and I know this for a fact, in China, for example, they cannot say anything about Chinese politics, but there are memes and things about U.S. politics all over China. And I know that because my Chinese students have showed me. So I wonder which politics, and also you can look at media literacy and deconstructing perspectives and try to leave the politics out of it. You can just look at language of persuasion and how people are, how people buy things, how people are convinced for things. So if some of the topics are contentious, maybe try to stay away from the contentious topics. Maybe let them see the effectiveness of teaching media literacy, and then maybe eventually go into more of those contentious topics if you need to. You don't need to go into really contentious topics in order to do media literacy and deconstruction and decentering. You can start with just topics about why do people buy and how do people buy, and consumer behavior. My particular students, they wanted to go into the political aspects, but of course we're also here in the United States where, let anything go in my classes. But, absolutely, listen to the regulations of the government and of your school and work within the constraints where you can. But I definitely see where you can still do that and not go political.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's exactly what I do right now. But yeah, thank you very much for a very informative presentation. Thanks.
Thank you so much for attending.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I am from the Philippines, and this is not typical. This is not a question, but I would like to ask tips because I myself am soon to be a pre-service teacher, and I would like to ask some tips on how we will going to share anything about media literacy to our future students.
So training teachers on how to share media literacy?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. So again, I would I would look at looking at the definition for media literacy and start by those core concepts of media literacy as well as those deconstruction questions. I would also maybe start with simple advertisements, maybe even some fun and catchy commercials, things that might be easy for them to get into and to use those strategies. And then as they feel more comfortable, get into more of like the different articles, maybe even more complicated media messages, and then even getting into the social media platforms in addition, which is a whole nother kind of side of things that I just recently added to my own talk with my own students, looking at how the media messages are represented on different social media platforms in addition to the message itself. But I would definitely start with those deconstruction questions and then kind of go from there. But yes, start small and have fun with it as well. With the pre-service teachers, you want them to keep teaching. You want them to, be engaged in education. So however they can stay the most engaged and whatever they can, however they can find the most meaningful practices from. That's where I would start, for sure.
I think Mahmouda. I'm right? Mahmouda, do you want to ask questions?
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if I can pose any question.
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Dr. Anastasia, there are huge literature on critical thinking and critical discourse analysis. Okay. However, when it's come to practical teaching, especially at the tertiary level, university level, actually, I don't have any idea of a textbook. Okay. So based on the findings of these, critical discourse analysis and so on, I wonder if you have any book available focusing on how news should be approached in teaching, how to approach news, especially at the university level, for language education, of course.
Yes,
Thank you. I'm Ali Reza from Iran.
I do have a book for you. I don't have the title, but my friend and colleague helped to co-author a textbook, which is exactly what you're talking about. So I'm happy to contact you to get the title.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I'll leave it in the chat, and I'll even pass it on to Mr. Faisal as well. But I do have a book. I just don't know the title off the top of my head. But yes, I will. But yes, absolutely, I will share that with you.
So is it possible for you to drop you an email just asking about the what happened to the book that you are speaking about?
I'm sorry?
It published or not? I mean, is it possible for me to drop an email? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And if anyone else has a book, leave it. And I think I see a few people who were in the chat who said they also have recommendations as well. I need to also find mine. But yes, if anyone has any books, please leave the name and the author in the chat.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anastasia.
Thank you so much for your question. Thank you for participation.
Any other questions, guys?
And I will also say in the next 10 minutes, my own children are going to be getting up for school. So I will need to end this in roughly 10 minutes because they will be going off to school this morning. But I have about 10 more minutes that I can offer if that helps.
You know, still people are joining us because, you know, of time difference.
I see.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people
I can probably stay until around 7, and then I need to get my children ready for school.
Okay, guys, just
it is morning here, and my coffee's almost done.
Okay, guys, I think no more questions.
Happy to answer.
I think Rubali.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I have a question. Like, I wanted to ask how, is the disinformation and the propaganda is the same thing?
So, disinformation and propaganda is the same thing?
Yeah, disinformation and propaganda is.
So, it is. So disinformation feeds into propaganda. Propaganda is more or less like a way to disseminate misinformation. And then misinformation is the actual information the way I see it. But propaganda can be kind of the vehicle that is used to disseminate misinformation either by images or articles or rhetoric or things like that. Oh, thank you. Language in the Media. I think that is the book I was thinking of. Thank you, Dina. Yes, and his name is Dr. Erhan Aslan. Yes, that is the book. Thank you. That's the book. My colleague, friend from Iran, Dina left it in the chat. That is the book. Yes, Language and Media. Absolutely. Yes, but I would say disinformation is the information and propaganda is the vehicle to spread the misinformation. But they're very much related. That's the way I would see it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think okay. I think it's time, but you can follow the chat box when you are free. You will see that if any questions.
Oh, absolutely. I do have the chat box on my phone as well, so I can also look at the questions, and I can also share my PowerPoint when I finish. And oh my goodness, I see people who are waiting in the lobby and people who it's kind of like a rotating.
You know, people still admitting. I mean, entering the. Okay, guys. I would like to say a big thank you for Dr. Anastasia for being with us, and just want to say clap to her. I would like to have her again with us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Faisal. Thank you to English Language Center in Oman for having me. It was a pleasure, and I hope to come back again soon. Take care. Stay safe, everyone.
Bye.
Morning, afternoon, wherever you are.
Bye.
And also, my slide. There we go. My
informative session.
there we go.
Thank you.